Hello everyone and welcome back to Gaian Garden. In today's video I will be sharing the part 2 of the process of making Turtle Island pot, and in this part we're gonna show how I made the sculpture. So first of all, thank you everybody who supported me and commented on the part 1 video and on my other videos, encouraging me to make this, and thank you for your patience waiting for this video. So let's take a look at the process. So I started off by making a bonsai pot, and then inside the pot I made an armature. The armature serves a purpose to put something on top, and it's completely hidden from view, and it's never going to be visible after the sculpture is finished. So it's a construction of kind of ribs that will hold the clay on top of it. I started off also by roughening the surface of the lip of the pot to make kind of slip with water and attach pieces, rough shapes for the limbs of the turtle, for the head and for the front legs that will kind of look like the turtle is peeking through the ocean. That's how I envisioned it. So to make any part of the body, we have to start with the very basic outline, just like in a sketch drawing of the anatomy study. So here I am using a shape that roughly resembles the shape of the front leg or that flipper, and I am adding it into the lip of the pot by scouring and then using water. The water softens the clay and creates slip, which acts like a glue. I am also making sure to attach all the areas where the clay is making contact, and I pat it. The padding serves as both creating more geometrical shape, but also it removes the air bubbles. So it's a very good way to add clay to clay. And here I'm making the head of the turtle by just grabbing a piece and roughly shaping it in my hands into something that looked like a turtle head from my memory and from the pictures that I've seen and studied beforehand. So as you can see, it's actually a solid piece of clay, and it has very, very rough outline. And once that piece looks the way that I believe the turtle head or the basic structure of the head looks like, then I can attach it into the pot. So I can always add more clay, take less clay, but at first we need to create the structure. So here I'm tapping on the table to make the flat surface, and that flat surface will be easier to connect to the pot. And now I'm ready to connect it. So I'm gonna score the head shape, adjust it slightly, make this negative space, and then connect it with water and my tools. This process of sculpting is organic because it allows us to adjust the items as we go and be flexible and be more of an observer and creator of the shape, and trying to understand the structure that we're building better as we're doing it. Nobody, well, maybe some people who already did it many times, they might know already how to do it, but for me, I was doing it the first time, so I had to figure it out as I was going. And I think it's helpful that way because we can learn from the process itself. So here in this sped up video, the hyperlapse, I recorded the process of creating kind of like a preliminary structure for the head muscles, for that skin around the neck that's kind of like a collar, because the turtle's head extends and then retreats into that skin fold, into the shell, so it needs that extra skin. And I'm trying to create the basic skull structure as well. You can see the nose and the eyes are forming. The angles of the paws are showing up. So it's very sketchy, still very rough, just an outline, like a contour kind of a process. And now I am rolling a slab of clay, and this slab of clay will go on top of the armature. So I measured and it looked like it was collapsing in one spot, so I added to my armature. And that way I achieved that shape that was more protruding upwards. And as I was shaping it, I also was cutting out around the neckline and around the limbs. And now I am adding the parts of the shell that are like hard scales. I wanted them to be in the triangular shape because of the design I had in mind. And I'm trying to see how the pattern will look like together. And actually it's pretty cool. It's like geometrical. I wasn't really basing it on the reference photo. It was more to do something that I thought looked good for my pot, and also I wanted to have those grooves so that the roots of the tree could actually like go in between, and because it's going to be root of a sculpture, the roots will go into those grooves and grip to the sculpture, hopefully. So here's how I attached them. Each individual one was scored and slipped, and the shell was also slipped. And then I'm pressing and just doing the regular attaching technique, which is making sure that it doesn't have air bubbles. So you have to either tap it or press it, and then use the tool to blend in that area where it's the area of contact. Yeah, there were many of them to do and go over. And as I was developing them, I was also reflecting of how can I make them look more 3D. So I used my tool to create more like sides, so they look kind of like a prism shape, 3D shape. And then gradually I started to smooth out the surfaces around where the shell is touching the limbs, where the limbs are merging, forming it a little bit more, refining it more, making it more detailed. So it is a process of gradually adding more details. It's think about it like layers. The basic layer is like a fundament and structure, and then on top of that we're adding like a little bit more difference in the height and the details of how the structure is built before we get to the final details, which are the scales. So I know it's very tempting to jump right into the details because that's what we see. So we think, oh, this is what we need to do to make it look like this particular animal. But actually the structure is more important, because if we rush through this process and we mess up on the structure part, then it's never going to be a proper shape, and all the time put into details is we're going to have to repeat it and maybe add more clay. So I think we just need to get over that feeling of, oh, it doesn't look good. It's not going to look good for a while before it starts to look good. So I just want to encourage you. That's why I wanted to show this process as well, of like how rough it looks, how, you know, unrefined and still undeveloped it looks as I am shaping it. And even the head, at this stage, I realized that my head was too small and it was out of proportion. So when I was working at it up close, I didn't see it, but then I stepped back and I saw it. And off the camera I added more clay, so you will see in the next clip that actually the head is already better. Oh yeah, here you can see how I changed the head. I added more clay. So as you go through the process, you know, things will keep changing, and it's important to reevaluate, step back, look at the reference photo, ask yourself, ask the turtle, like, what is it that you need to, you know, to have so that you look more like a turtle. Now it's time to start working on the toes or fingers, and again I am using the same principle of first roughly outlining where each specific finger will lay, And basically what I was doing, I was pressing the clay from one solid mass into sections so that they could be like a more 3D, but I didn't have to add individual fingers. And then for the harder scales, bigger scales on the edges, I used this method of taking small bits of clay and just pressing them into a flat little ovals and attaching them to the pre-wetted clay and then overlaying one on top of another so that this will create this nice scaly structure. So I don't have to spend hours and hours trying to, curve it and shape it. This was easier for me, and also I thought it was very interesting how naturally the clay kind of guided me that way, that some scales were bigger, some were smaller, and then I thought, well, if I'm going to have a variety of shapes, a variety of sizes, it's going to look more natural, because in nature obviously there is a pattern to the scales, but they do vary, closer, maybe closer to the bottom of the limb, they are getting smaller, and then they got bigger on that curved part. So I kind of went with that, and I think it looked more realistic that way. So that was not something that I knew. Again, it was just this happy accident that happened when I was sculpting. So I think it's cool to do it that way, because we can learn as we go and be open to what's showing up, and like, instead of keeping this rigid idea that this needs to look a certain way. So once I discovered this cool thing about variety of shapes and sizes, then I knew that I should do it to all the scales. So when I was using this hole cutter tool, I also thought I'm gonna make them bigger and smaller using different size of the hole cutter tool. And the hole cutter tool is very cool for this, because you can go in and then lift the clay, and this will create this 3D effect. But it's so easy that it, like, literally it takes few minutes to do it. And you can see that closer to the end I just only accentuated the scales, so they're not very much coming out. And closer to the body I used the bigger tool. So that was really fun to discover and experiment with in the sculpture. And I really like at the end effect how the iron oxide that I used showed that texture. So you can see the texture, it's looking pretty nice. So after having this rough outline of the scales, of course I needed to go in with my smooth wooden shaping tool and soften it up, otherwise it would be super sharp and dangerous to anybody who touches the pot, including myself. So again, going from unrefined to refined, taking the time as we go through the process. I'm patting it with my finger to soften those sharp edges. That was the reason why I was doing that. And now I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. So adding the larger scales, and then preparing the surface, scouring water, little pieces of clay, and it's starting to look much more like a turtle when those little details appear. Here is a hyperlapse of the whole process of the details of the scale adding, and also gradually working on the shell and the face. I use the sponge to wash down and soften the edges of the shell so that I don't have any ridges appearing, and that's how it looks like when it's still unrefined, but much more refined already. And here's another hyperlapse. This is a pattern I discovered accidentally by using this tool, and I thought it was very cool. So I did a radial design on each of the hardened scales on the turtle's shell that would come in the middle, and I thought it looked really interesting. So here's how I was doing it. I would just press with that tool alongside the edge and towards the center. And again, I wasn't really counting how many times trying to divide it, just eyeballing it and seeing what feels good. So I'm pretty sure if somebody went and counted them, it would not be an even number, but that's okay. Who's gonna count the ridges on my bonsai pot? The tree will be on top of it anyways. So this is again the tool. The tool showed me how to do it because it already was curved like this, and I thought it was really interesting. Maybe I'll use it for some other patterns. Maybe it will inspire you for some other patterns. Doesn't have to be a turtle shell, but exploring the tools like that is really fun way of creating. And once those ridges were there, I still had to double check, make sure that they are smooth, that nothing has those sharp sticking out parts, so that I don't hurt myself or the tree doesn't hurt its roots on it. And here I am looking at the turtle. It's looking pretty majestic, and yeah, I was very happy with it. So let's hear what I said. Nice. You are a turtle. Now we need a sky woman and a little muskrat. Very cool. After 2 days of work, my pot is now completed. In the first day, I built the pot, waited for it to dry a little bit to the leather heart stage, and then I built the turtle sculpture on top. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. It looks much better than in my mind because now it became reality. At the end of the project, there is this feeling of disbelief, almost like, how did this happen? It's pretty magical. I just want to share a little bit about how I was inspired to do this pot. I found a little turtle when I was biking on the road, and I moved him to the river. And then somewhere, like anywhere, I don't know, just turtles were appearing everywhere. And I was thinking about turtles. I was thinking about making a bonsai pot for like a root over sculpture, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And because of those turtles everywhere, I was thinking, yeah, I'll try the turtle pot, and just went with it. I drew it first, and then I started to do it. Was it scary? Yes, it was scary. I have never seen anything like this done before. Where there is a pot with the sculpture attached to it. I'm new to bonsai, so I wasn't sure, is it gonna work, is it not gonna work, and I still don't know. Now I have to wait a few years to find out whether the tree will like it or not. But it's worth it because you're trying something new and playing, and it's very refreshing to do something new. So I encourage you to try something that, if you have this idea in your mind, it seems impossible, because this seemed impossible to me. that's worth a try. And just as a bonus, I wanted to show you two other animals that came from, this one was from this firing. This is a little orca whale. So it's a sculpture I made for someone, but very simple orca, and just has a painting over the white clay, black underglaze, and then the clear glaze on top. So I think it's a really cute little totem that you can take with you and or put on the shelf. And here is another example of the sculpture I also made for somebody, and this is an Arctic wolf sculpture. So yeah, it was pretty scary to do those two, but you know, I tried it, and once I was doing it, I forgot that it was scary. And then when you forget it, it's scary, then things just happen. So I hope you get to try to play and find this video helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. In the next part, we will be showing how I glazed this pot and what methods I used. I did not fully record the whole glazing process, but I've recorded the staining process, so you will see that. And I will explain how I fired it so it makes sense. And then there will be one more part in the video, so it'll be 4 parts, and in the 4th part I will show what I potted on top of this pot, and an update of how it's doing right now. So thank you again for your patience and watching, and I'll see you in the next video.